I'm excited to help out with this training today. When Tony and Stephanie approached me a couple, I guess it was a month or so ago about this, I thought, well, this is kind of a neat idea, and it's obviously focused on a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and something that's been that I've been spending a lot of time on really over the last year or so. So my name's Bill Johnson. I'm the extension weed scientist at Purdue. I've been here now for about 20 years. I was at the University of Missouri for 7 years prior to that, in basically the same job. So I've had a chance to observe the herbicide market and help out with weed control practices for a number of years. And hopefully I can add some of my experiences here to this training program and help us keep the conservation practices in place and also keep the weeds under control as well. All right, so I guess the thing that I'll introduce in this introductory session here is really, questions about why is there a herbicide shortage? And there's a pretty long list of reasons why. And in reality, it's not really new. Over the past 20 years or so, occasionally there's a shortage of one active ingredient here and there. Sometimes it's related to the product coming off patent and the main manufacturer not making it anymore. Sometimes it's related to a plant in a foreign country somewhere that has some issues. But really, this one that we're dealing with now, I've never been through anything like this where we have shortages of so many active ingredients, and really for a number of different reasons. And I think that the reality of the herbicide industry is that our main active ingredients, all of our main active ingredients now are off patent. And so what happens then is when they go off patent is that manufacturing goes to countries where the environmental regulations around manufacturing are a little bit more lax, and then you also have low-cost labor. So we do have a lot of products that are made in India and China, and the COVID issues, and then labor issues and things like that in China, and also some of the things related to trucking and shipping and things like that are kind of the main reasons we have the shortage. But once we get these things made and on a ship and over here, until recently, where trucking is now picked up a little bit. I mean, we had a shortage of workers to unload these big container ships in the Gulfs. We have a shortage of truckers, and then, and one of the things that I've heard some of the manufacturers talk about as well is just a shortage of plastic and cardboard and steel to make the totes and the 2.5 gallon jugs and the plastic containers and that sort of thing. So those things are all kind of related to it. In terms of glyphosate specifically, we had Hurricane Ida in Louisiana that idled that plant for about 6 to 8 weeks. That plant now is back up and running again, but when you look at the sheer volume of glyphosate that gets used in the U.S., I don't know how much actually comes out of that plant. I think it's less than 20%, but any small disruption in a plant like that is going to have an impact as well. So in terms of the active ingredients, glyphosate and glufosinate are easily the big ones. And I keep in contact with some retailers in Indiana here that kind of keep me up to date on what their supplies look like. In some cases, the retailers are telling me it looks like we're going to get enough glyphosate for one application. So we're going to have to figure out, where is glyphosate most effectively used? And those will be some of the things that we talk about today. Some of the other folks are saying, well, we don't have any glyphosate in our inventory yet, and we don't know how much we're going to get. And then other folks are saying, well, they're guaranteeing us we're going to have X number of gallons by a certain date, and that we should be able to get enough for our follow-up spray applications if needed. So the glyphosate story is kind of all over the board, just depending on who you talk to. What I'm still telling people, for the most part, if you could only spray glyphosate one time, let's figure out the most effective way to utilize that glyphosate. For some folks, it's going to be to terminate their cover crop. For other folks, it's going to be to use it in crop. And so there's a number of different things that can impact that. With glufosinate, this is the one. Glufosinate usage has just skyrocketed over the last 4 or 5 years, and driven in large part by the fact that we have so many weeds now that are resistant to glyphosate, and then some concerns about the off-target movement of dicamba. So some of the folks that tried dicamba to control some of these glyphosate resistant weeds weren't happy because they couldn't keep it in place, and so now they've gone to glufosinate. So glufosinate, unfortunately, is the one that is probably almost just as critical as glyphosate, because there are some retailers that don't have a drop of this stuff in their inventory yet, and they're being told that the allocation that they're going to get is about 80% of the average that they've used the last 3 years. And so at best, they're going to get enough glufosinate for one application for the folks that buy it from them. And in a worst case scenario, if they've just started using a lot of glufosinate over the past year, then their allocation just simply isn't that high if the growth has been pretty rapid and they're getting an average of the last 3 years. So that one could be even more problematic, particularly in areas where you have glyphosate shortages as well. Atrazine, the latest we're hearing on it is that in terms of straight goods, the liquid formulations are in short supply, but the dry formulations are not in short supply. We're also hearing that the atrazine premixes are not in short supply. So that's good news. But if you're a person that likes to add additional atrazine to a premix because it's cheap and it works, then it could be in somewhat short supply. Callisto, because the price of Callisto had dropped pretty dramatically over the last 5 years, almost every acre of corn, I mean, it was being used like atrazine. Almost every acre of corn was getting some Callisto applied to it. Evidently, Syngenta is not able to make Callisto because they can't get some of the intermediates. And so all that's going to come out of the generic market. And it's really unclear in terms of how much Callisto the generic market can supply. One of the things that was really floating around a lot late last summer and into the fall is using clethodim as a replacement for glyphosate. So clethodim is a post-grass herbicide. Key things to remember about it is it doesn't work well when the temperatures are less than 60 degrees, and it's really it's a herbicide that's easily antagonized by broadleaf herbicides as well. So it's not a great replacement. It could be functional. It's going to depend a little bit on how we use it. So I think this is going to kind of wrap up where we're at. But basically, I think what we're going to try to really emphasize to people is it's going to be important to understand what weeds are going to be problematic, to understand what your limitations are as far as terminating your cover crop. Some cover crops, when they're small, can be terminated with a number of different herbicides. For the folks that like to allow the cover crops to grow longer or perhaps plant green, that's when it gets more challenging with glyphosate being in short supply. So we'll go through some scenarios there. And then, really, when utilizing alternative herbicides, weed control guides, whether it's ours or someone else's, these weed control guides and how to use them is going to be a pretty important skill and a resource to have at your fingertips. So Stephanie, I think those were kind of the main points I wanted to cover in this. Well, maybe one thing I would leave you with is this herbicide supply issue is certainly not going to be resolved this growing season. I think the supply chain issues that are currently in place and the war is going to complicate things. So we anticipate the prices are going to continue to remain high, and really we just need to kind of figure out how to get through this growing season, and then maybe in the fall things just start to turn around a little bit. But some people will tell you that we're in this for at least another